So previously we have learned what matter is and how to classify matter. Now the next thing which we're going to learn in this video is what is matter made up of. So see guys, previously we have seen all these examples of matter. Now my question to you is, what are they ultimately made up of? Is this clear? So the answer is all matter, no matter how big or small it is, no matter what color it is, what material it is made up of, ultimately it is made up of extremely small particles, and these particles are known as atoms or molecules. So I repeat, all matter is made up of extremely small particles which are known as atoms or molecules, and these particles are so small that we can't even see them with a microscope. No matter how powerful microscope you have, you cannot see these particles. That is how small these particles are. Is this clear? So what is matter made up of? Atoms or molecules. So for example, look at this table chair over here, right? What is it made up of? You might say wood. What is wood made up of? So basically the concept is, if I start breaking down this table and chair into extremely small particles, ultimately I'll reach a point which is very small. That small particle is known as an atom or molecule. So all matter is ultimately made up of very small particles called atoms or molecules. So let's first read this much. Everything around us is made up of tiny pieces or particles. The particles which make up matter are atoms or molecules. The particles which make up matter are so small that we cannot see them even with a high power microscope. So I hope this much is clear. Now you're probably wondering, if we cannot see these particles, how do we know they're there? Right? It's a valid question, right? If we can't see something, seeing is believing. We have not seen them, how do we know they're there? The answer to that question is experiments. So scientists perform certain experiments, which we'll see in a short while, and the results of those experiments can only be explained if matter is made up of tiny particles. So we'll see basically two things. One is diffusion and the other is Brownian motion. So experiments on diffusion and Brownian motion tell us two things, guys. One, matter is made up of extremely small particles, and second, these particles are continuously moving. Is this clear? So see, even without seeing them, we have certain evidence which tells us that all the things or all matter is made up of tiny particles. So see guys, most of the evidence for existence of particles in matter and their motion comes from the experiments on diffusion, which is mixing of different substances on their own, and Brownian motion. Don't worry, we'll study in detail what is diffusion and Brownian motion. We will now describe some simple experiments like dissolving of a solid in a liquid, mixing of two gases, and movement of pollen grains in water. So these three things we're going to study in the upcoming videos, and the outcomes of these experiments will show us that matter is made up of tiny particles which are continuously moving. So which can only be explained by assuming that all matter is made up of tiny particles which are constantly moving. Is this clear? So what is matter made up of? Extremely small particles called atoms or molecules. What is the evidence? We'll see these experiments over here, and the results of these experiments will tell us that not only is matter made up of tiny particles, but these particles are constantly moving. Is this clear? So I hope what matter is made up of and the evidence which you're going to see is clear.